This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details.
Gatorade Zero, the #1 proven electrolyte blend, made with zero sugar. Designed to hydrate better than water so you can lose more sweat and push more limits. Gatorade Zero, is it in you?
This is your When the Snark Cannot Possibly Be Controversial Leader Fan Radio Network.
What do you mean?
And KFAN.com. 2 minutes, 11 seconds past 3 o'clock Central Daylight Saving Time. Welcome back. Monday edition bumper-to-bumper program on a fairly warm Monday afternoon here in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. My name is Dan Barreiro. I host the program. Guardsy produces the show. And we will be with you until 6:30 tonight. It's a 3.5-hour program. And it will, by the way, originate on Thursday from the Perch. Yes, training camp is upon us.
The stories a stadium could tell.
I think the first major practice involving everybody is Wednesday. We will be out there Thursday. We're at a bunch of other days, including a Friday I saw on the schedule.
Yeah,
did you notice that?
I did, yes.
I don't think we've ever done a Friday. I can't remember of very many Fridays we've done, which is good. I'm glad we're doing it that day. So we got a bunch of training camp days coming up. I know pretty much every show, obviously, after the morning is out there on a pretty regular basis. And KOC will be among our guests from the exclusive KFAN Perch on Thursday. Today's program will include Johnny Athletic, and my pledge is to really probably not talk all that much basketball today. I think we're going to try to get into some football and some other subjects with John. John considers himself, I think, a generalist, even though obviously he specializes in Minnesota Timberwolves stuff and NBA stuff. So that's the plan. 5:30 is when John Athletic is scheduled to join us. News on the March is scheduled for today. Ode to a Dead Guy, unfortunately, is a part of the program today. The Bradshaw and Bryan KFAN text line is, as always, going to be part of the show today. 64686. If you would like to get in on all the fun. Dan, can you please tell me what the woman in your montage says? Something about a 30 share and a 20 rating. Yes, it's a character, a network big shot, TV network big shot, played by Faye Dunaway, the actress, the very esteemed actress, Faye Dunaway. And she's just talking about, kind of admitting that she's got nothing else going in her life other than she cares about a 30 share and a 20 rating. And so the whole bit is she's kind of brought in, historically, Kessler could relate to that, relate to this if he's listening. Historically, at the major networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, there was sort of a separation of church and state where network TV was kind of left alone, even if it didn't make as much money as the power brokers and the money men and women would have liked. Because their feeling was, well, no, there's some stuff we just got to do.
Yep.
Right? And so the premise of network is that wall is collapsing, and we got to find ways to get better ratings for our TV, our nightly news, even if we're just going to put a carnival barker on, which is ultimately what they do in that film. A very underrated film that, by the way, if you really want to trace how things have changed in television, even to this day, you can say this was the first great satire that sort of predicted many of the directions that network TV would ultimately go. But that's what that's from. 30 share and a 20 rating is the character played. I can't remember the name of the woman, but Faye Dunaway was the actress who played that character. Very highly recommended. So I mentioned we got a lot of different directions to go in today for sure, both in the toy department and on the A section as well. I'm not going to lie to you. I really didn't think hockey was going to be among the subjects today.
Yeah, right.
Although we had a really good conversation, kind of a reintroduction to Russo Radio yesterday, who's been on vacation. He was in Spain, so he gave kind of a travelogue about his latest trip with Defined Destinations guy. And And then eventually we got to hockey and we got to the Kaprizov, situation and many other things. But this sort of just came upon me today and now I kind of can't get it out of my head because you could say it's snarky, but I would say, well, can you call it snarky if it's accurate? In other words, it's the truth cannot be controversial. And it was brought to my attention. I want to give proper credit here if I at all can. Oh, this is from listener Anna, it looks like. Thought the hockey ambassador should see this. And it's from a website or a Twitter handle called Hooked on Hockey. And it appears to be a Lego set, okay, of the XL Energy Center. Now, it's not going to be called that anymore, correct? That's
right.
Over?
It's going to be Grand Casino Arena.
But this was, it still is until it's not. And it reads, it's got, kind of a Lego model sort of view of the XL Energy Center. And then it reads 652 pieces. The number of Lego pieces. Warning, state of hockey is in eternal rebuild. Includes empty trophy case.
It's frustrating.
Wow.
That's what I said.
As Kessler would say.
That's a wow. You could say it's vicious. I don't know what the context is. I don't know if this is an attempt to... Looks like there's a bunch of Lego sets, and I don't know if they're all as snarky as this one. But how do you argue with it? Warning, state of hockey is in eternal rebuild. And then parenthetically, includes empty trophy case. Hockey community, are you offended? I know you get defensive.
Badly.
But, and I'm not going to ask Johnny Athletic about it because I know how much he will enjoy this particular item. But to Anna, I say, I'm glad you brought it to the attention of the hockey ambassador. And the hockey ambassador, I guess it all depends on what you think the role of the hockey ambassador is supposed to be.
Right. Are you a cheerleader or do you have to keep it real?
Are you an apologist? Are you a Minnesota Wild hockey lickspittle? Or are you supposed to keep it real? And this hockey ambassador's view on this subject is, I don't think there's any choice but to keep it real because I don't think we're fooling anybody if we try to go lickspittle on the bit. In other words, if we say, oh, come on now. Had a lot of good moments. I mean, yeah, we haven't gone as far as we wanted, but we've been a fairly relevant team. We've rarely bottomed out, which, by the way, is true. But I think people would see right through that, right? But the question is, here's what I'll do. I'll retweet this particular tweet so the hockey community can actually, because part of it is I'm describing it. It's better to see the image.
And did you go through the list at all?
I did not.
They're very funny.
So are they all in that same satirical mode?
I'll give you a couple examples.
Okay.
So Hooked on Hockey said I had ChatGPT create a Lego set for every team in Arena.
Oh, yeah. I see the
Toronto choking hazard.
Yes, I just see it.
My favorite, there's then Montreal, the Bell Center, includes bilingual heartbreak. The Ottawa Senators, the Canadian Tire Center, the postscript is, or the subhead is, as disappointing as the rest of the city. Edmonton includes everything but a playoff caliber goalie.
So it sounds like no one is spared.
No one is spared.
Yeah. It's almost Don. It's like Don Rickles on hockey steroids or something. They sound like these are Rickles jokes where they rip everybody. I assume some of the best teams though can't get ripped, can they?
Probably not. I'll go through here.
If they go through every one of them. It's weird what hits you. And it's not telling us anything we didn't already know, especially like I said in late July. But it kind of struck me like, wow, this sort of does put it in perspective. We have to look this in the face. We can't look away. Hockey community, you have to stop looking away. Bill Guerin, you can't look away. I'm sure he'd say, well, no, I don't look away. I want it just as bad as everybody else does. But I don't think you can deny anything that's described in here. In fact, based on a couple of the other ones you've shown me, They could be even more vicious than it was. See, part of the problem for the Wild is, you mentioned the Toronto one. Let me go back to it here for the purposes of this discussion. I knew what I was doing. It would be better. The Toronto one was the choking hazard, correct?
Yes.
Well, the real indictment on the Wild is we haven't even been kind of close enough to choke.
It's true.
That's the thing. It's like we haven't even been enough in the ballpark to say, well, they choked that one away. So to a certain extent, it's an even greater indictment. It's just empty. Like it says, empty trophy case. And even that's a little forgiving because it's not just empty trophy case. It's we got out of the second. How many years has it been since we got out of the first round? Like 10? 10 years?
Yeah, at least 10.
So whoever put that together, Hooked on Hockey Magazine, sounds like, congratulations.
Very funny.
Very subtle, very clever, very funny. And I'm sorry if it hurts feelings in the state of hockey. They could have done something with that too, I guess. They could have played off something, that whole state of hockey mantra. Maybe that's for next year or something. But it's undeniable. And I think the healthiest thing for people in the hockey community to do, that they can do, is, under the recommendation of the hockey ambassador, don't look away. Don't pretend. Don't act like, what's that? That's cheap. Well, it can be cheap.
Yeah.
But it could also be true. And in this case, I think it's clever and biting, but also just flat out undeniable. So that might be as much hockey as we talk about the rest of the show. I don't know if there's any more to get to. I kind of got reintroduced to things with Russo yesterday, and it got me thinking, and then I got sent this, and I feel like as the ambassador, even though I know Fallness has tried to strip me of those duties. For all I know, he's done that. I don't know if he's talked to the owner about it.
He may have.
He probably have. It wouldn't surprise me. I just don't think he can look away if he wants, but I don't think we can look away. And I think, again, a good ambassador is not afraid to hold the team's feet to the fire and to say, well, yeah, it may make you feel kind of bad, but can you deny the elementary truth of it? I don't think you can. Is it time for some bonus bucks?
It is. The Fan and BigDeck.com want to give you a shot to win bonus bucks. It is our national cash contest. First keyword of the week is Bills. Go to KFAN.com and enter the keyword.
Gatorade is the #1 proven electrolyte blend designed to hydrate better than water. So you can lose more sweat and raise your game. Gatorade, is it in you?
The last thing anyone wants is to leave behind confusion, stress, or worse, family conflict. That's why estate planning isn't just for the wealthy. It's for families like mine, and probably like yours. With Trust and Will, I created my estate plan in minutes, from naming guardians for my kids to putting our house in a trust to avoid probate. Fast, affordable, and way easier than I thought. Every plan is designed by estate planning attorneys and customized for your state. Plans start at just $199 and include essentials like healthcare directives and power of attorney. With Trust and Will's bank-level security and built-in privacy protections, your personal information and your wishes stay safe. Whether you're newly married, raising kids, caring for aging parents, or just want peace of mind, Trust and Will makes it easy to protect what matters most. Go to trustandwill.com, use code RADIO at checkout, and save 20% on your personalized plan. Because there's no better time to protect the people you love. Trust and Will is an online estate planning service. See website for details.
Word Bill.
Well, the state of hockey's taking it well. Certainly in the constructive spirit in which it was intended. Go back to basketball, Dan. What does the Wolves Lego set feature, Dan? Maybe we should rebrand to the state of pond hockey. Wow, that seems to be someone willing to accept the snark and the savagery. Huh. I don't know what the Wolves Lego set would be like. I'm surprised the Lego set doesn't mention it as being a choking hazard. That's Casey from Fargo. Does the Lego set also say that it may be missing a few key pieces.
That you could do for the Wolves.
Well played. Really for both.
Yeah.
Did they make one of U.S. Bank Stadium with an empty trophy case?
That's true. We have that, too.
It's undeniable. I would think. Well, I was about to say the Vikings have been more relevant, but I guess from a playoff standpoint, not by much. Can't argue with the truth, says Pete in Woodbury. Facts are facts, Dan. Anna is spot on. State of hockey in disarray. I'm on the beach in Detroit Lakes. I don't give a bleeping lick about dumb hockey in the winter, let alone July bleeping 22. That's from Fired Denny Guy. It'll be a full week of football. Don't worry. There was a lot of football yesterday, in fact, on the program. Yeah, there's a lot of choking hazard.
But Toronto took that one.
Yeah.
He used that in another one.
In a different one, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's obviously others probably that for which it could apply as well. I mentioned Ode to a Dead Guy. We're going to get to that later. We're kind of wide open till 5:30. No guest scheduled till then. That's when Johnny Athletic will join the broadcast. Did you see, speaking of football, the President of the United States has gotten involved in the Washington Football Club discussion.
I happen to see this, yes.
Here's this was via his Truth Social, whatever it is. I don't know. Is this Bluesky? Is Truth Social? Is he back on Twitter? I don't even remember.
I think he's back on
Twitter. But he's not tweeting, I don't think. Or is he?
I think his tweets.
So what's Truth Social?
That's his own.
That's just his own deal.
That's his own social media network, yeah.
Is he on Bluesky?
I don't think so, but I don't know.
My statement on the Washington Redskins,
which we were looking for, by the way.
Totally blown up, but only in a very positive way. I may put a restriction on them that if they don't change the name back to the original Washington Redskins and get rid of the ridiculous moniker Washington Commanders, I will not make a deal for them to build a stadium in Washington. And he actually finishes with, make Indians great again.
Yeah, MEGA.
One of the reasons I love the fire.org is their unrelenting consistency in calling out this kind of nonsense. And that's what this is, of course. I don't even know if this is a classic case of I don't even know if he means it. He's just, the president wants to say it. But the idea that a president would attempt to dictate to an organization that has the right to decide what it wants to call itself is about as un-American a concept as there is. But the fire.org is good at sort of checking history. Here's what they wrote in reaction to the Trump declaration. In 2020, Mayor Muriel Bowser called on the Redskins to change their name if they wanted to relocate to D.C. Yesterday, President Trump threatened to block the team's new D.C. stadium if they didn't rebrand back to the Redskins. Different jerseys, same playbook, both fouls. 100% right. You can't just be mad at it because the person you despise or have no respect for, in other words, the other side of the political aisle is the person who's leading the way. I'm looking at the headline in the Washington Post that that fire.org cites and references. For years, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser has made it clear that she wants the Washington Redskins to change their name, especially if they want to move back to the district. And she reiterated that sentiment in a radio interview with the Team 980 on Friday. Bowser said she wants the Redskins, who played at Griffith Stadium from 37 to 60 and an RFK Stadium from 61 to 96, to return to the district, but that the team name is hindering progress towards making a deal for a new stadium. Fire.org also notes that on October 8th, 2013, Donald J. Trump on X, or Twitter then, wrote this. Presidents should not be telling the Washington Redskins to change their name. Our country has far bigger problems. Focus on them, not nonsense. Same guy. So we have the level of hypocrisy on this subject is stunning, really across the board, quite frankly. But it's good to have an organization that tries to play the long game on this, not just remember what was said most recently. So they're not just calling out this president, they're calling out anybody who decides they're going to try to use their power, their authority in the elected position they're in to make a decision that should be left to others. And you got to be consistent with that. If you don't believe that politicians should be messing around with this, that it should be up to teams to do what they want to do, then you got to be consistent with it, whether you like the name that they have or they're trying to hold on to, or you don't. So my guess is, well, he might not forget about this in a week or two because it's Washington, right?
It's right there.
And it's right there. It's in the wheelhouse. It's going to be coming up. It has come up before. But you just shake your head and you say, what exactly are, I mean, if the feeling was that the previous administration too often reared its head in areas where it had no business being, right? If all you do is really resort to that same playbook because you're convinced that your side is right on whatever the subject is, and therefore it's okay for me to use my power to do it because I'm on the right side of a given issue. It's not okay when my opponent did it. It was un-American, right? It was, how dare you? Who gives you the authority to get involved in those sorts of things? The team itself, I don't think has responded. I think the Cleveland baseball team has, because in the original one of the tweets, the president also demanded that the Cleveland Guardians return to being the Cleveland Indians, right? And I think the Cleveland organization officially has said, thank you, no, we're fine. We're not changing back. We're fine where we are, right? To this point, unless you've seen it, I haven't seen anybody with the Washington football team that has addressed the president's attempt to sort of put the pressure on in this regard.
I don't think I have. I wasn't actively looking for it. I don't see anything specifically. Mostly just getting ready for the season kind of stuff.
Yeah. Call it what it is, Dan, an attempted distraction from the Epstein files. I don't even believe that. I think he knows nothing's going to distract from the Epstein files. And we have actually an update on that story that I want to cover, which will not be well received from people who are utterly and completely convinced that there's so much stuff that's being withheld to protect people that it's not even funny. They're probably not going to like this particular viewpoint, but we may save that for a little bit later as well. All right, let's do this. Let's make this the bottom of the hour pause. As I mentioned, we do have Ode to a Dead Guy today. When I come back first, though, I want to tell you about a bizarre incident that I witnessed not far from these studios, leaving the show Sunday Sermons yesterday, that I have not read anything about, have not seen a single report about, and I'm curious if anybody else was in that area, heard about it, saw it, because it was rather harrowing as it played out in front of me. I'll give you some details on that, and we'll get to a bunch of other stuff.
Gatorade Zero, the #1 proven electrolyte blend, made with zero sugar. Designed to hydrate better than water so you can lose more sweat and push more limits. Gatorade Zero, is it in you?
The last thing anyone wants is to leave behind confusion, stress, or worse, family conflict. That's why estate planning isn't just for the wealthy. It's for families like mine, and probably like yours. With Trust and Will, I created my estate plan in minutes, from naming guardians for my kids to putting our house in a trust to avoid probate. Fast, affordable, and way easier than I thought. Every plan is designed by estate planning attorneys and customized for your state. Plans start at just $199 and include essentials like healthcare directives and power of attorney. With Trust and Will's bank-level security and built-in privacy protections, your personal information and your wishes stay safe. Whether you're newly married, raising kids, caring for aging parents, or just want peace of mind, Trust and Will makes it easy to protect what matters most. Go to trustandwill.com, use code RADIO at checkout, and save 20% on your personalized plan. Because there's no better time to protect the people you love. Trust and Will is an online estate planning service. See website for details.
When we come back. Johnny Athletic joins at 5:30. 5:30 tonight, and the plan is to not talk all that much professional basketball. We might get into, in fact, even before him, we might talk a little bit about the WNBA All-Star Weekend. A couple of interesting and tantalizing developments there to discuss. And sure enough, a prominent WNBA player did find a way to savage Caitlin Clark. Did you see that particular sound?
If it's what I'm thinking, yes.
Kind of not just her,
yes,
but kind of still through her.
About the negotiations.
Which I think now is, I think it's in the contract. I think you're required if you're a WNBA, a standout WNBA player, a big name player, that at least once an All-Star game, you have to find a way to savage her. You know, whether it's direct or a little bit more passive-aggressive. More on that in a minute. So I'm leaving. We wrap up sermons, and I am sitting at the stoplight to take a left to get on the ramp for 394, headed west. So this is probably about, between 11 and 11:30. I don't know the exact time. This past Sunday. And I look to my right, and, the reason I looked to my right was I heard a loud noise as if a collision had taken place to my right. And sure enough, there are cars at the top who are just coming off of 394 from the eastbound side, waiting also at a light. They're stopped up there. And suddenly another car trying to kind of get around them has smashed into one of the vehicles that's in a standing, a stop position. At which point, the driver of said vehicle who hit the others, passenger front seat, passengers in each of the back seats, sprints out of the vehicle and starts also sprinting across, to be on the northbound side of Xenia Park Place towards, there's a bunch of buildings there, there's a bunch of parking lots, etc. As this is already starting to happen, a state trooper has also screeched his car to a halt in the middle of that intersection.
So he just happened to be there.
Well, no, it was like he came behind them, I think, and was chasing them and finally got back to where they were.
Got it.
He gets out of his vehicle, gun out, gun pointed, starts chasing the four individuals.
Oh, no.
Across, like I said, a couple of those parking lots. That's the last I saw of it. I guess once upon a time, the reporter and me might have said, well, you got to follow this. What's going on? I took the left when the light turned green. That's the last I saw of it. And in real time, it felt like I was on a movie set. That's how bizarre it was. Collision. We're getting the hell out of Dodge. Again, driver, passengers. They're all four sprinting out, and then state trooper guy chasing them, holding a gun, pointing the gun at them, clearly, as far as I could see, not firing at them. And that's the last I knew. So I'm trying to figure out, I'm assuming, I'm trying to play, deductive reasoning game that the vehicle was stolen.
Yeah, makes sense.
And so the cop, the state trooper knew about that. They're chasing the vehicle to try to apprehend the those involved in the theft, and then they are sprinting out of there completely. So anybody who knows it, I looked online. My guess is, I'm sure this happens more than we know. First of all, in a metropolitan area, just when it happens in front of you, it's jolting a little bit. Like, God. And you get into that mode of, well, what if they kept going through the intersection? Because I'm sitting there stopped, just on the other side of Xenia Park Place. Your whole life goes in front of your eyes when you see a state police officer with a gun pointed directly as he's chasing. Now, I believe there was only one cop in that vehicle, in that squad car at the time. Now, I did notice heading west on 394, some other state troopers, lights going, coming back the other direction. My assumption is they were on their way to try to deal with the chase as well. So, I looked online. In fact, there's a lot of controversy regarding now. I think the old days of in newspaper sense, and even radio and TV stations, used to have somebody that basically their only job was to monitor police band.
Scanner squawk, basically.
Exactly it. Scanner squawk, yeah. I don't even think you can do that the same way anymore because I think there's a term for it. Not scrambled, but encrypted.
Yeah.
Right? And there's controversy about that. In fact, I even think there's some police who aren't crazy about some of the encryption ideas moving forward. But I've checking the usual places where that kind of stuff gets aggregated, I never could find anything. So I'm curious if anybody might have been in, what are the chances somebody else was in the same area at the same time? Probably because it all happened very quickly. Now, how long the scene played out after that, I don't know, because I got out of Dodge. Like I said, I was on my way westbound, and I said, no, I could chase it, but what exactly am I going to do? Where am I going to go? How am I actually going to be helping?
Are you going to help?
Yeah. Realistically, I'm probably going to be hurting. So, plus, you don't want to be part of a hostage situation either. But
no,
anyway,
when you see the gun, you made the right call.
That woke my ass up a little bit.
Did you think about coming back in and joining? Didn't Blakemore and Max do a show yesterday?
They did an hour show after me. No, I did not. In fact, I'm not conditioned. I think that's their first show back in a while, so I wasn't even conditioned for it. So it didn't even occur to me to do that. Other than it's like, did I see? Then you start questioning yourself. Did I see that?
Right. What was that?
What was that? This isn't a movie set that I happened to stumble upon, right?
Coen Brothers doing anything in town?
I didn't see any cameras. That was the thing. That was what made me think, no, this is sadly real, and looked really real. When the cops got his gun out.
One cop. That makes me nervous.
Sprinting across. Yeah. So my assumption is I should have called the chief just to see, because I assume procedure on that is if you got one cop and you got four individuals you're chasing, I assume they're all going to kind of end up going different directions. What do you do? What are the rules of engagement there? I don't even know what they would be. Do you wait for backup? And did anybody eventually get apprehended? I don't. I have absolutely no idea. But it did look to me as if there was ill intent all the way around in that situation. Did not look good at all. So I'm getting now. I guess it's also possible that one of the individuals in the car was wanted for something, but it looked to me more like it might have been a stolen car situation. And I'm not going to lie to you. You have a certain, because of the history of this town, it goes through your mind. Well, what if he fires on one of these individuals and hits one? Now, as far as I could see, he was not firing his gun at all. He was pointing it, but he was not using it, at least the part that I saw. So,
did most people seem to be just going about their business alongside with you? I imagine you kept kind of looking back as you were getting on the ramp. Yeah, but then you want to, that's you don't want to keep doing that because then, well, to be honest, there wasn't that much to look at then because the real action was the chase. Right. So that was moving away from us very quickly. You got four guys, they all look pretty young, and the cop chasing them. And how long, like I said, so there wasn't, and it didn't look like the damage done to the vehicle that got hit by the presumably stolen car was like extensive. It didn't look like it was a bad crack up, So a very strange scene. So if anybody's got any information, let me know. The texter guy writes, as part of my work, I'm tied in with State Patrol Dispatch, and these chases happen a handful of times every day throughout the metro. Yeah, I bet you that you just don't always see it, and you comprehend it differently if it's in front of you. Well, right? Anytime a weapon is out,
exactly,
that no matter what, will jar you. It would definitely jar me.
Dan, was the cop bald? Did he have a lollipop sticking out of his mouth? No, this wasn't a Kojak situation, and this really happened. And thank goodness I don't think there was. I think if somebody would have gotten hurt, it would somehow get to the media jackals, right? You would think.
Yes.
Although sometimes things are a lot slower, quite frankly, than they should be. But I'm, like you said, I'm sure this stuff, as a couple of texters said, this stuff probably happens, more than we know. And I don't even know what the rules of engagement are at this point. I assume, like I said, if you're the cop and the people you're trying to apprehend are not descending upon you, they're moving away from you, then there's no use of the weapon that's legal at that point, right? It's if they come at you, that might be a different situation, God forbid. But in any case, it was puzzling because then I spent the whole rest of the day just hoping to get a little bit of more information, even though maybe it's, like I said, it speaks for itself.
And sadly might be a dime a dozen.
And sadly might be, that's even the worst part about it. There's no question. Had a couple other texts I wanted to get to regarding, if anybody else sees it. You know what? Let's get to the Epstein stuff now, because I have a lot of people saying this is just an attempted, it's the ongoing theory about attempted distraction from the Epstein files. Here's my caution to folks. And again, a lot of people are not going to want to hear this because they don't want to hear this. And, it's a free country. You can process this any way you want to. But because, how do I phrase this professionally? Whatever we think of the Epstein files, whether we think there's being suppressed, whether we think there's really some bad stuff that is being hidden or not, I think reporting should matter to a certain extent. And it shouldn't change, because this is one of those weird things politically, where once upon a time, there were a lot of lefties, right, who were suspicious before Trump had anything to do with this particular story about, what was being suppressed and for what purposes, correct? And it was almost a story that, well, you could say even was the Biden administration, previous administration, were they hiding stuff here? Were they holding on to stuff for the same reason? I don't think you can feel differently about this story on the basis of who it makes look bad in a given moment. In other words, the reporting on this story doesn't change no matter who you're trying to go after. Where Trump and his lick spittles, I think, have looked bad is what we laid out last week, that they're the ones who milked this in the last several years as being dastardly and dangerous, and we gotta blow the lid on this story, right? And they didn't really know whether there was any there, but they didn't care, right? It was, we got the Dems on the run on this thing, correct? That was the whole deal. So we're just going to milk it. We're going to work up our base. And that's where the righties who fell under this spell are rippable now, because now those same folks, many of them who were clamoring for exposure, are saying there's nothing to see here. So you can't have it both ways. That either means you're now suppressing it for self-protection reasons, or you made it up on the front end because it served your purpose then, right? Because it allowed you to exploit a particular story that you thought politically was very helpful. All this is backdrop to a reading from a guy who wrote, Ben Smith, co-founder and editor-in-chief of Semaphore, and he wrote a piece called How to Resist the Epstein Temptation. He writes that the Epstein story brings out two of the worst traits in journalists, and to really point fingers here in our audiences. First, the human tendency to fill in gaps with wild theories that flatter our prejudices, and that's the key to it, flatter our prejudices. Second, the bias toward what's new over what's known. The larger Epstein belief system is QAnon for people who went to college. If you spend 5 minutes looking at the evidence, you're amazed by what's not known about the case. If you spend an hour, you learn that there's just no evidence to support the core suggestion that Epstein, who did undeniably horribly abuse underage girls, also ran a child sex and blackmail ring that ensnared powerful men, parenthetically, on behalf, naturally, of Mossad. 20 years of investigations and a decade of aggressive journalism has turned up 0 videos, no client list. His helper, Ghislaine Maxwell, is sitting in federal prison for the usual reason. And this is key. She didn't have anyone better to hand over to prosecutors. Because isn't it pretty obvious if she did, she would have? And is there anything new to say about the social life of a middle-aged Donald Trump? The Wall Street Journal's hilarious and gross revelation of his leering 50th birthday party note to Epstein sits squarely in what everyone already knows. Trump and Epstein were Barty Boy associates on the LOUCHE, I don't know how to pronounce that word, side of 1990s New York. The novelty of the Journal's great scoop doesn't mean we learn something new about the president. There's obviously great fun in watching the world's dumbest media revolution, the social media Epstein detectives, led by podcasters turned Keystone cops, devour its children. There are political incentives for Democrats to join MAGA in stoking wild theories. And there are good, non-conspiratorial questions about how Epstein linked business, social climbing, and sex, as the heroic reporter who opened the case, Julie Brown, suggested the other day. And maybe investigative documents, perhaps including the files Trump ordered released, can answer some of these questions. But those of us trying to stay sane ought to keep in mind the distinction between evidence and speculation, fantasy, and reality. I just think there's a lot of truth to what he says. And you can't be more interested in the story because it puts on the defensive the guy you despise on your side of the political aisle than you did when it was the other guy in the political aisle. That's my issue with it. Again, where Trump deserves no sympathy on his own exasperation with what he calls this ongoing fascination with the story, is that his own people, more than any other group, turned it into a story the last 2 or 3 years. But that doesn't mean there is a real story there. It could well mean all they were doing was making it up as they went along because that's what they do and because then it served their purpose, right? And I don't think that changes just because now, we got him going. Yeah, he's distracted. He doesn't want any more information out on this. Now, eventually we may find that out. I don't know. But as this reporter points out, there's been a lot of reporting done on this. He quotes also Brown, the one who's effectively reopened the case in the Miami Herald. Here's her theory. I don't think he blackmailed people directly like that. I mean, if you just really think about it, if you send a girl over to have sex with one of these men, it's not like you write it down. I don't believe he had a list. I just think that he used these women, girls, as pawns in order to ingratiate himself with people that he wanted to do business with. It was a business transaction to him. I don't think it was an official or outright blackmail scheme like that. I think it was more like, he knows this about me. Maybe I better do this. She's been the top reporter breaking, way back when we quoted from her extensively then, breaking this story. And she's been in the muck. She revealed a lot of it. And I tend to think that if she thinks there's several other pieces to this in that regard, she's the last person who's going to be discouraging it, right? Because she wants it all out. That's been her goal from the beginning. But she doesn't think there's as much there in this regard as people now want to believe. Now, I'll say again, Republicans don't deserve any sympathy for people continuing to be skeptical because they whipped up the masses on this, right? From the beginning.
They did. We played it last week.
But that doesn't mean necessarily that there is as much there as the speculation would indicate. And I just, again, this approach to the story doesn't play as well. It's not as sexy. It's controversial. It's not, grab me some popcorn. But I think there may actually be, some truth to it. So we'll see. I tend to think ultimately, and we talked about Gerald Posner with this in the past, This might now be evolving into one of those stories like the JFK assassination that no matter what is revealed, people are going to believe what they want to believe.
I think we're there.
And we may be there in this case. And again, Republicans can't whine about it because they drummed it up way back, that they were the ones. And even people in this administration who a few weeks ago were saying, we got all these videos, we got all these pages, we got all this stuff to go through. Well, okay, that's fine. But so you can't be surprised that people are going, wait a minute. What about all those declarations you made? What about all that stuff you said had to see the light of day? There's a part of me that says, God, I hope as much comes out as possible so that maybe we can at least get definitive answers or move on with the rest of our lives and not make these assumptions. Because, again, if in the beginning you don't have faith in the Trump bobos who were building this story, the last 3 or 4 years into something ominous, if you otherwise think, well, those folks make stuff up all the time. Well, wouldn't that indicate the possibility that they were making this up? You can't suddenly change your view on because you think you've got them on the defensive and so, well, no, I think there's something here, even though these are the same people who invented so many other lies. They don't care whether there's any substance to any of these stories. They're going to hold on to the stories as long as they think they can work in their favor, right? That's all they're interested in, which might well mean there's not as much there as a lot of our texters want to believe. That's all I'm going to say. All right, top of the hour break. What do we have? Johnny, not till 5:30. We've got news on the march to get to. I mentioned Ode to a Dead Guy. I do have some Vikings to discuss. How about a little bit about a pretty interesting summer league? I shouldn't say summer league. NBA or WNBA All-Star Weekend in Indianapolis, where a player did find a way to savage Caitlin Clark, even though she wasn't playing.
Nope.
Even though she was not participating in the three-point shooting contest, and even though she wore the shirt that all of her teammates wore as well, at least as a warm-up shirt at some point before the All-Star game. We'll get to all that now.
Gatorade Zero, the #1 proven electrolyte blend, made with zero sugar. Designed to hydrate better than water so you can lose more sweat and push more limits. Gatorade Zero, is it in you?